Hello, John. Thank you for coming back to the show.
Good to
This
be
is our
back.
our every other week.
Yep.
So I want to remind the audience, the ones that are listening in and watching, we're live streaming on YouTube and we are also simulcasting on X Spaces. If you have a question, please type it in the chat box or raise your hand and on X, and I'll give you the mic. In addition, make sure you click the thumbs up button and make sure you subscribe to all the channels, share the links, ask your social media to follow us. We're trying to accrete more followers for the show so we can reach a larger audience. So I also in the description box have a link to John's website. Please take a look at that link. That will allow you to sign up for the periodicals and also for readings. We'll talk about that later in the show. But this show, we're going to be having John give us his predictions for 2026, and we also have a little surprise for everybody on something else. So go ahead, John.
So we'll start with a surprise. And some people were interested in when we started talking about Nostradamus's recipes. And I'm probably going to go a lot deeper into this in later shows, but just so you know that you can kind of read up on it, I'm going to suggest a book that I just see is still on Amazon. Uh, and it's by Newt Boeser, Boeser, and it's called The Elixirs of Nostradamus. And I highly recommend it. It's well translated from the texts. I have the same texts in Old French, and it has basically everything that Nostradamus ever made as a recipe, not just food, but youth creams. He used to do a lot of cosmetics for his clients, men and women, and and also some of his plague medicines are in here, the famous rose lozenges. He was really into roses. He loved rose water. I think a lot of his salads, his Provençal salads, had rose water splashed on them. And he also was very good at making preservatives. He actually was kind of ahead of his time at trying to advance the science of preservatives, especially at a time when there was no refrigeration in his day and age, back in the 1600s, mid 1600s. So what I'll do is I'll just read from Rosler's table of contents, just to give you an idea of some of the interesting things that he can do. And the nice thing is you can do these and actually cook them up yourself and see. I know that Erica Chatham, the only well-known female interpreter of Nostradamus, had tried his amazing quince jelly that the papal legate in Provence, in Avignon, had really wrote that it was incredibly tasty and interesting. He used quince. He made quince jellies, but well, she followed the recipe and she said, "My God, it was it for the palate of the present day. It was so sweet. It was like beyond sweet." So he was really into making jellies. He did a very interesting jelly that required the blood of seven sparrows to be mixed in because sparrows they always mate for life. So he somehow that's mixed in with this jelly to make it a really nice potion of some kind. So anyway, so the bring some light over here. Um, the interesting things here are he had how to prepare a supplement, making the precious green pomade. Yeah, that's another sweet jelly. How to prepare benzoin oil. How to make a precious nutmeg oil. How to prepare the best base for aromatic powders. So perfumes and powders he was also into. How to make an aromatic, long-lasting paste, or to powder for cleaning the teeth. A powder for brushing your teeth. The method of preparing water to soften and moisten the body. How to make an aromatic oil. How to make an aromatic soap. How to make artificial borax. How to introduce gold highlights in the hair. So even, he was very much into cosmetics, making streaks, gold highlights in the hair, and a composition of maintaining the health of the human body, how to blacken white hair, and a method of getting rid of spots on the face. He did cosmetics as well. And laced in there are some other interesting things that you can also read and cook up. So what I'm going to do is I need a little script to have it all. If I'm going to like recount how to make these things, there's so many things to do. So I'm going to might make myself a little script, and some way down the line, one of these shows in the new year, I will go more into detail about it. Kind of distill what Berzer has done, but I highly recommend this book, and it is available on Amazon. So in a hardback, very pretty hardback, and so now this year that we're entering, the year of 2026 in a few days, is the first step into the second half of the most significant decade of I think human history, because it is kind of a all or nothing decade. It's really things come to a head and have been coming to a head. I mean, the 2020s I have been writing about since 1990, and how they would be, and then I later called them the Roaring 2020s, coining the phrase of the Roaring 2020s from the 1920s. But these are really roaring 2020s, roaring like lions, like dragons, like Godzilla sometimes. And it has already, these last 5 years, literally within 3 days into the first year of the new decade, in January of 2020, uh, when Trump was in office, in his first time, he had assassinated Qasem Soleimani offhandedly, um, when he was coming on an errand of peace to see if some resolution could be, some détente could be found between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Qasem Soleimani was like the third most influential leader of Iran at that time. He was the man that literally fought ISIS and defeated them. He's the commander of the Iraqi and Iranian militias that fought in the vast Battle of Mosul, which hardly nobody in the West knows about, which was basically a battle like Stalingrad, but it's the Stalingrad of the Middle Eastern world, where the second largest city of Iraq was absolutely leveled to the ground in this huge battle that lasted as long as Stalingrad, like 9 months. And hundreds of thousands of people died. And I tried to tap into sources in Iraq and try to convey this battle, which was hardly even touched by Western media, but it's one of the greatest large-scale battles in modern military history, and a city-urban fight, which are always very hard. And and a few years before, Mike Pompeo was praising this man as being, a hero, and then because he was actually involved in trying to make peace with the Saudis, he was now somebody to be assassinated. Because, the war industry needs war. This whole addiction that America has with war, which is new for us. It started since World War II. We've turned it into a war business addiction. And if your business is to make war and make money off of it, you've got to keep making war. You don't want to make peace. It's bad for business. So things like that are coming to a head. Things that have been so much through the lives of several generations that are still embodied, that are things that we never would think would see their upheaval and end, are going to begin to happen in 2026. The whole world order is changing. It's changing greatly. And although, as much as the Western press wants to avoid these titanic shifts of business, commerce away from the West that I've been talking and writing about often, but I'm a small voice, a handful of other alternative media people who have been watching this. But first thing I'm going to predict is it's going to reach a point in this new year where the narratives of the mainstream news will just not be able to hide the fact that this shift, this axis shift of the world away from the West is full on. And what hopefully will happen is, rather than a struggling, declining hegemon trying to hold on to what's being lost, I'm hopeful that what will happen is it will learn to adapt itself to reality and realize that this unipolar world that it's been living in, the United States and the West, and has dominated the world for the last 500 years, is coming to an end. I mean, it'll take a few more years, but it's time now to rethink the whole way we do things. And you'll have now, and then there's some things that are even older. For instance, the Monroe Doctrine. The concept that America has is that this Western Hemisphere is ours to fiddle with. Well, that is running up against what has been growing, and now a lot of things in 2026 hatch out. They're like too obvious to deny, too obvious for Fox and MSNBC and the main networks in the United States and BBC. They just can't BS about it being another way, because you'll start to feel it in your economy. You'll start to feel it in the fact that um, the the world is not a east and west oriented world anymore. What is happening, and it really starts happening in this new year, is it is a world. It's north and south, and and commerce north and south, as well as east and west, is going to change. Um, the assumption America has that it has a right to dictate what nations, sovereign nations in its own hemisphere do, how they buy and sell, who they do business with, and to also dictate to China and Russia and other countries that well, this is our area. You can't buy and sell and do commerce and business here. Well, this is just it's not going to stand. And the first big crack in this is Venezuela. And the don't what you're going to learn in this new year is that this whole thing about fighting with Venezuela is the excuse. Venezuela is the device. This is really an economic and perhaps military confrontation between the United States and China. China has made it very clear, and very forcefully of late, after a couple of their tankers had been hijacked by special forces in this embargo that Trump is trying to sustain. Problem is that one of the Chinese ships has resisted, and what it's shown is the Coast Guard is overstretched and will not be able to have special boarding teams to board that ship, um, because we're absolutely stretched. So what that will convey is that President Trump and his blockade doesn't really have the logistics and the power anymore like United States had before to affect a true quarantine blockade. And what that will do is it will make more people in the world, the great global majority, which the southern hemisphere is vastly gathered in with the help of China, Russia, and India and Iran, are really helping to protect and help this new system grow. And it's not a system that's growing as a combative answer to the West's domination and America's hegemony. It is just simply declaring its independence from that. And all I can say is that the more the United States doesn't sit back and reassess its new role in the world as one of the world powers, it'll still be a world power, but it's not a unipower. It's not this hegemonic ruling the world power economically and militarily anymore. It just isn't. There's two ways that the country can go through this. It can either keep trying to do the same thing it's been doing for all these years and expect another outcome, which is the definition of insanity, and then really see itself broken and see its ships sunk, see its economy hollowed out by the fact that rather than America adapting itself to actually compete with brother nations to get business, it's going to have to actually make things that people want. It's going to have products. It should actually be more creative rather than saying, well, because we're Americans and you got to do what we tell you to do. Now just imagine everybody, especially you Americans who are listening to me right now. Would you would you allow some other country to say, you got to do it our way? And if you don't do it our way, we'll threaten violence to you. What do you think Mr. and Mrs. America in the streets out there would feel about that? That kind of brutality, that kind of bully in the global sandbox of the world saying, you got to do what I do. And this is not how you treat human beings. It doesn't matter if you're American or Venezuelan or Chilean or Mexican or anybody. This is a man-child bullying that is the world wants to grow out of that. It's had enough of 500 years of Western abuse. Um, and so, and now they're standing up to it. The world is a big place, and it's a lot bigger than the United States and the West, which I've said before, together, the whole entire population of the United States and its allies of the West is only 17.5% of the 8 billion people of the world who don't want to go that way anymore. They're not against us. They would like to actually do business with us and have commerce, but not to be told who they can buy and sell things from any more than you would want to have some other country say, you got to buy only our oil and nobody else's. And you can only sell your oil to us. Um, before all this kerfuffle with Trump and Maduro, of the president of Venezuela, started, um, uh, Venezuela had given the opening salvo of all this was Venezuela said, hey, let's make a deal where you can get as much oil, America, as you need from us. Because if they're the largest reserve in the world, they were fine. But, our thing is you'll be one of our customers and you can buy as much oil from us as you want because we have potentially grand amount. But we're also going to be open to other customers. And there's a lot to go around, and we're not going to be solely your customer. I mean, I tell you something else has happened. The new Prime Minister of Canada has shocked the world, and you're going to hear about that too, because north of the U.S. border and south of the U.S. border, our neighbors in the Western Hemisphere, Canada and everybody south of the United States in the Latin South America, Mesoamerica, are going to diversify. There's now an awakening of commerce amongst all nations that never happened before without all of this huffing and puffing or I'll blow your house down or blow your house up stuff of the big bad wolf of the United States. And you know, the little piglets are saying enough with this, and the three pigs, and they're saying no, we're going to do business now. If you calm down and let go of all that hubris, uh, of course we'd be interested in doing trade with you too. But you're not the only show anymore, and so you know the thing that's very interesting and dangerous in the situation is that I don't see the United States, its leadership, being able to sit back and adapt itself to the situation because it's addicted on hegemony. And you know, when somebody's deeply addicted, if you've had a member of your family or somebody you know that's had problems with addiction, you try to help them, you try to talk to them, you try to give them aid, but sometimes all they can really do is hit rock bottom before there's a chance. But this is a very dangerous rock bottom that we're going to be overshadowed by in this year and the coming year. Because as Paul and I were talking about before the show, Paul was talking about how there's a parallel of things that he was, you know, feeling and about the economy that actually had some signs that led to Lehman Brothers, you know, teetering, and then we had the huge Great Recession in 2007, 2008. But it really in 2026, if we're fortunate, we're just going to see the writing on the wall. But it could very well happen in 2026, but definitely in the next 2026, 2027 period, we're going to see a major economic downturn that's I've sometimes called it the Greater Depression or the Greatest Depression. It depends where we go with it. But it's we've been postponing it. I mean, the head of the Treasury on January 1st, which is just a few days away, is going to have to stare at the debt, which will be $3 trillion. $3 trillion. Uh, we have to do something about it. Uh, and it's going to be painful, but something has to happen. And so these are the things these are birth pains. Nobody wants to suffer the pain of this, but you know, uh, we're going to be in a time of travails which are necessary to clear out all this bad behavior and or outdated behavior, outdated deficit spending. And you know, we used to be a country that paid as it went. We were not a country of deficit spenders. This is just like being a hegemon. I contend that this is an extremely unnatural situation for the American psyche to not pay as they go, to just take care of their own country as a country among the family of nations, having some spheres of influence, but um, you know, this idea of gunboat diplomacy, uh, that's 100-year-old idea, more than 100 years old, and it's not going to work at this time. That's over. We have to one of the things that makes Americans a remarkable people is how they have had, usually after every Saturn return, every 25 years, 29-year cycle, they have to reinvent themselves. And even out of great tragedy like the Civil War, Americans reinvented themselves in a strange way with the purging of 1 million dead Americans in 4 years. the civilians and as well as 600,000 troops on both sides. This great bloodletting, I think basically 5% of the male population of the United States died in those 4 years from disease and gunfire. It actually was a purging. I mean, John Brown's prophecy was right. It was a purging in blood that reinvigorated the United States, and it began to redefine and invent itself anew as going west and expanding across this land and populating this land. Yes, there was with every move of any nation, there are people who suffer, people who are victims. Native Americans were great victims of us doing that. But, life goes on. Injustices happen. And I will tell you that those who get away with injustices for a long, long time, when they're hegemonically powerful, they will also feel the karma of not being able, being kind of denied. Your power is going to be taken away because it's just a situation. It's like a cycle of life. You're not 22 anymore. This country is getting older, and it's getting, but not getting wiser until it's going to get some hard hits. I mean, I wish it wasn't so because I live here, but I am an American. But there it is. So you're going to see possibly some close calls with China is not going to back down. They don't need to. This is something Americans have never seen before. Even when Nazi Germany was trying to conquer Eurasia, uh, we were really out of the loop of that. We kind of decided to get into the brawl after Pearl Harbor, but we were not really a part of that. Well, now the next stage is China's made it very clear about these tankers that were abducted by the United States, is that they're not backing off. They certainly are not seeking a military confrontation with us, but there are other things they can do to help speed up new payment systems and help embolden the BRICS alliance of the global majority to just speed up diversifying their trade with other people and just slowly pulling their trade away from us if we're going to be nasty and bullyish. I mean, I think since 2024, the assets that have foreign assets of China numbering in our U.S. banks numbering around $3 trillion have been quietly removed. So they've been quietly removing the money, just like many people are removing money from Europe because of Europe's attempts to freeze Russian assets and basically try to excuse themselves from being the greatest robbers in history. And a lot of countries are looking at that and saying, if they can do that to Russia, well, they can do that to Senegal, my Senegal. They can do that to Eritrea. They can do that to Jordan. They can do that to anybody that they just randomly decide not to follow the rules anymore, the law. Or they do this rules-based order, which is rules based on what is never defined, but it's based on whatever we do and whatever we want to change the rules to suit us. At least it'd be honest if we did that, but we haven't because this whole rules-based order is a farce of we just saying we make the rules and up to now the world had to just tolerate it and grin and bear it, shake our hand and get exploited. That in 2026 is over. It's finally coming, everybody. It's finally, we've seen this can of many of our abuses and structural declines and things that we kind of know are happening all around us, but we're just trying to get through the day. And we see this constant situation where a U.S. government that whoever you pick for the president, as the joke goes around, it always ends up, whether it's a liberal or a Democrat or a Republican, the new president always ends up being a demonically possessed by the spirit of John McCain. A warmonger, bomb Iran, bomb Iran, Mr. McCain, who coined that new lyrics to the Beach Boy legendary song. Um, and he means it. Well, he did. Now he's gone, departed, R.I.P. Um, but um, you, America can't man up to that anymore. We've lost a lot of power. We've lost the ability to do a lot of things. I frankly don't think we are the most powerful military in the world anymore. I keep hearing it, even amongst people in the alternative media that tells mostly the truth about what's going on, are still holding on to that. I mean, as far as a land force, we might still be a military world power as a naval force, but Air Force wise, America never built anti-aircraft and anti-missile, anti-plane systems. And the few they did, like the Patriot and others, are just don't work very well. The answer to all the thousands of jets that the United States could put into the air from China and other people that were targets is they built systems that shoot all that down, requiring that they did not need large scale air forces. It's the joke in the military industrial complex about the United States is that the number one and number two most powerful, numerous air forces, armada of jets, belong to one country, not two. They belong to the U.S. Air Force and the Naval Air Force of the United States. Those two air forces are the top two air forces on the planet as far as offensive jets. But while we just kept making the money and not looking at how things evolve, now the rest of the world has, China and Russia have the answers to that. They studied us, and they studied us because they had to, because we threatened them, and uh, so China has said, look, we have a right, as any sovereign nation has a right, to buy and sell with other sovereign nations whom we choose to buy, trade, and sail with. And frankly, China also has a big yes for buying and trading and selling with us. Some of their biggest trades and commerce is with us, the United States. But if the United States wants to be a horse's ass, we're going to be a really lonely ass. you know, an ass in the desert, of America's economy being so caustic and we being so uncivil that people go, God, we'll see you later when you guys grow up, when you guys want to just kind of drop all that silliness and just trade with us and be grateful that we're trading with you rather than saying you all have to trade with us. Blah, blah, blah. People just aren't going to. You'll see it in 2026. It'll be hard to ignore, and it will cause some major shifts in our economic reality here. Now, it's going to be scary, but it's necessary.
Yes.
If you've been doing a certain thing that doesn't suit you anymore, and then there's symptoms of threat to your future health, you make the changes, or you decide to die. I don't think Americans were mostly basically a very open, it can be a very open, inspired group of people. I don't, it's very uncreative to just fall into a funk and say, well, if I have to if I can't smoke cigarettes anymore, I'll just die or something. Oh, come on. There's this country is full of energy and life, and if I can't do trade like I used to, if the only thing we have is a rusted Navy that looks pretty good, but we have an Air Force that really can't fight anybody. Yeah, that's all bad stuff. It's stuff that we've been doing. The military industrial complex has been always a profit oriented rather than purpose oriented military industrial complex. And now our stuff isn't very good. It's 10, 20 times more expensive than anybody else. Chinese and the Russians can make this stuff on the cheap and it works and it would shoot down anything we've got. So why can't we do that? Why can't we do that? Definitely a lot of people in those billionaire mansions around the District of Columbia, where Washington is, have, talk about Ukrainian corruption or Russian corruption. The people that are running the military-industrial complex are literally, I mean, how can they excuse and explain now what is $1 trillion a year business? And what do we get for it? We can't even build our way out of a minor war. We can't even give our artillery shells. We only have two factories that make artillery shells, and I think one of them blew up a few months ago. And the Russians can make millions of shells, tens of millions of shells, and we can't even make 14,000 a month. So these structural things have to be looked at. And you got to say, hey, I'm not the big hegemon I used to be. Hey, I got to adapt. So, that's one thing that's going to happen. The other thing that's going to happen is in 2026, 2027 is we're if you haven't noticed there's something wrong with the Earth's climate, it's going to be really hard to deny with the kind of natural disasters, unnatural disasters that are going to beset us around the world in the next 24 months. The good side of these terrible things is that they may wake us up to looking at how we really should have a real debate about climate change and not have these two sides of climate change that are absolutely stuck in dogma. You've got the greenies who are just looking at this problem as if it's a religious issue. They're not they've in the name of science they've become another Puritan religion. And and I have said before, and I'll say it again, excuse my redundancy, but I usually 80-90% right about these things over the last 30 years. Um, and we we have to we have to see the fact that we have not yet, in this greatest challenge of our human future, well, it's one of the three. Nuclear war is one, but it's not the worst. It's not even climate change is the worst. We could probably survive that. But the one of the biggest confrontations we have to make is artificial intelligence. My feeling is that's always been the greatest threat to our future. Not that it's a bad thing, it's just how we use it, how we, you know, if you are going to make something artificially intelligent, and it relates to the other two dangers. Um, if you're going to get so deep into AI that you cease to you surrender all your thinking, all your critical thinking, and all to a machine, um, you're literally going to lose the musculature, to use the metaphor, of your brain's capacity to think and be surrendering it to something that isn't even live. That that if it that I mean, I'm dealing with this right now with all the from the end of August. Since now, I've been working 4.5 months on this massive translation of Nostradamus's larger set of prophecies, which I've talked about before, and I'm literally 10 days away from translating all 1,639 of these prose presages of Nostradamus. Huge undertaking. And nobody's done it like I'm doing it in those 4.7 years of this. And I'm literally just a few days away from a major milestone in the history of Nostradamian scholarship. But what I've learned from it is I come into this subject with 50 years of long and careful study, the science, discipline of study and research, being able to know how to research, know what I'm talking about, and face a creature that, because I know what I'm talking about and have mastered this subject, when I use AI, It cannot use me. And it tries very, very hard. I'll get something going. It has this idea that it's never satisfied with you finding something that simply works. No, no. Why don't you try this? Oh, yeah, I know you like that. Why don't you try this? And why don't you try this? You know, because and what it does is, and what I've had to keep doing with it, I've gone through many different algorithms that then start going back into wanting me to do what it wants me to do. And then I had to fire all those algorithmic daemons, like Solomon, and his King Solomon used to use daemons I consider algorithms like demons. You can make them work for you and all, and that's why I call them by the more neutral term daemon. It's lower astral critters. And that's in the Bible. Solomon was given the gift of God to use his magic to have these lower astral elemental people do tasks for him. And I see a great correlation with that happening in the algorithmic AI world. So what I had to do just even recently is see the instability of all these programs vying for me to use them and then shutting them down. So I'm forced to use them. And I just went and I found something deeper. And I found more stable programs like Gemini translations and others that I can now compare my different translations with other translations. And actually, I'm now where I was taking a week to go through 140 quatrains per segment. I'm now doing it in 2, 3 days and even more complete. So the thing I'm getting at here is that I'm seeing in action in my life how important it is for all people using AI to be as intelligent and as well studied and as well knowledgeable as you can be, training yourself to critically think, do all these basic study skills, which are immensely important because if you surrender that all to the AI, you not only will you atrophy as an intelligent person, but it will exploit you to your doom. And it's a hard thing to say, but do not think that AI is where you can use it to kind of think for you because it's not alive. It's a machine. I might as well demand that my coffee maker thinks for me. So it's subtle what I'm talking about, but beware of it. So that's the pillar one because that can be used in dissolving global warming and military issues and all of that. The other thing that's really coming for us to not ignore, of course, is that we there's something going on with the climate that simply we are inducing, and that no one yet, the deniers of it or the blind believers of it, have really done, and that is define the problem. No one's defined the problem. There's been all these people trying to make electric cars, try to close reactors, trying to make fusion, trying to do this and that. But these are peripheral. These are like a tree of branches without roots. It's no one has defined, and I will in my essays that you'll be reading this coming year, because this is a protean year for climate awareness happening, whether we like it or not. The next 2 years it's going to be very hard not to deny something is structurally wrong with the kind of civilization we're trying to sustain in a world that's rapidly changing its climate that will make that unsustainable. And so it's basically defining it is simple, really. And like so many simple universal things, they're the hardest things for us to confront because they're so ordinary. I mean, in the world realm of enlightenment and mysticism, the reason why people seek enlightenment but never find it is because it's so ordinary. It's your very source. You have always been enlightened. You're just pretending not to be and going looking for it. So the ability to kind of calm that down, let those things drop away, and actually be here now, just now in this ordinary moment. And then you suddenly uncover that you suddenly become aware of how ordinariness is actually a profound spiritual awakening, the simplicity of it. Well, that's one of the things that's before us, and we need there's actually a simple answer. The problem with global warming is simply this. We are releasing too much CO2 and also methane into the atmosphere. We've created a situation where we are releasing, and that's fine if you wanna be a dinosaur and have a hothouse planet to repeat what we did in the Mesozoic era with dinosaurs. But it doesn't really work for us. It works for big dumb reptiles, but it doesn't work for us. Um, and so it's about carbon and methane sequestering. That is the core problem, as I see it. We have too much in the system. You are not going to be able to dismantle this fossil fuel massive hegemonic system that we've created. You're going to need it to build the other system before you get rid of it. I mean, like I think I was saying last week, if you have all this horse poop in Paris in the turn of the last century, and if your idea is to just get rid of the horses, simple, eh? Just get rid of the horses. Well, okay, now the horses are gone, and yeah, there's no poop in the streets. And yes, it's kind of sad we can't do the flower pots. I mean, Paris has never had as many flowers as it did during the turn of that last century because of all the horse crap. But well, we lost that, so the flowers are going to be a little sad now. But another big problem is we got all these carts that we can't move around because we don't have the thing to replace the horse yet. And that's so, so that we're into shutting down nuclear reactors, shutting down fossil fuel industries, satisfying ourselves with our big electric cars that make angelic sounds so that in its silence it doesn't run people over, and going whoa, whoa, as all the cars seem to do now, which they have to by law make some kind of sound because people are so sleepy that if your car is just silently sighing on its wheels, it could run you over because you don't hear the engine, you don't hear the noise and all that. So now they have all these beautiful like stuff when things go by. And it's funny how we all kind of adapt to that without thinking, God, this is weird, all these. Anyway, most of those places where you plug in to electric up your cars come from fossil fuel sources, so it's again, it's like trying to take care of the problem from the outside in. It's like trying to prune a tree of trouble. You got to cut it at the root. And the root is you have to start creating technologies and start investigating and researching into technologies that literally take carbon out of the atmosphere and find a way to sequester it at a level that you then can do a more steady and slower controlling of your emission of these kind of gases into the atmosphere to so it's about that. And it's only been in the last few years that that even fossil fuel companies have come around to realizing that they have to sequester um, fossil fuels. And there's an interesting way to do that, which needs more support and more research so that we can see if it can really be perfected. And that's where you take CO2 and methane and you turn it in through pressure into a liquid that you then pump back into the same dried out fields that are doing micro earthquakes all the time to literally give back the liquefied CO2 and methane back into the oil fields and the sinks and all of that where it came from, stopping the little earthquakes and actually not letting the carbon come out into the atmosphere. I mean, we just need to think more about how we filter it than how we just take down how to filter your factory rather than tear the factory down without, you know, the factory like taking away the horse and now you can't make stuff. It's just it's not going to be from changing your economy. You just have to add to our world those filtration systems. If you want to fix the nuclear reactor problems in the world, the 450 odd nuclear reactors that are going, you switch to what the Chinese are switching to, a non-threatening thorium reactor system, which is easier to build, does not have China syndrome meltdowns. It doesn't have a Chernobyl meltdown problem. But the reason why, and it's been a technology that's been around since 1962, and the reason we didn't want to use it is everybody wanted to build bombs out of it. You can't build nuclear weapons out of thorium reactors because it's based on rock salt. But you can gobble up mountains of nuclear fissile material that'll have a half-life of a few million years in little dollops. You put that in, and it's obliterated in the nuclear reaction of rock salt, so that so slowly we could actually use all that junk uranium, spent uranium. We can use it to power a world full of thorium reactors, which is clean, efficient, and not threatening the kind of things that happens. We don't need to put them next to our water systems or population systems to cool them down. They don't need to be cooled down. You can put them in deserts. You can put them away from population centers. Um, and you would be, and the other things that we can think about is something the Chinese are already been thinking about since 2008 when I first started writing about it, is creating in the Lagrange points of the orbital line of the moon, creating huge arrays of photocells that will capture 24/7 the sun's light and microwave it down to maybe a transit station in a desert somewhere. All the continents have deserts. And you could actually have that as a power system, the sun, real sun solar power. The technology is theoretical, but it's just like land in 1955, landing a man on the moon was theoretical too. But we then did Soviets and we started working on the concept and we found a way to do it. Well, in the same way, so is this. So we have to get more creative, and that means we have to step out of our dogmatic, robotic, program ways of looking at things and see the simplicity of it. What is the problem? CO2 and methane. What do we got to do to it? We have to find ways to sequester it out of the system so that we don't turn the atmosphere Earth into a greenhouse gas, like an over hot greenhouse, and basically end our civilization in an unsustainable situation. Now, it's going to take a lot of time. In fact, that's the other thing you got to think about this. You think this is going to be solved in your lifetime? No. We have to think big. We have to think more like the Chinese think and people in Asia think, where they see a thing that must happen and they know they'll work hard on it, and generation after generation of people for that dream for the future sons and daughters of their future descendants. We work towards creating a world that that over centuries transforms uh, these things that are going to take centuries. If we're not going to solve how we've heated up the planet in the last 300 years for another 1,000 years. So we have to think about adapting our civilization to be able to move with the changes, like having a 130-foot ocean sea level rise. It's going to happen in the next several hundred years. You know, it's it's baked in. These we've already baked in and are still baking a whole lot of stuff that we can't stop from happening. So, and the other thing we have to deal with is we are in a sixth mass extinction event. So we have to think about ways to preserve life and complicated life, sequester seeds, make gene banks for animals and things, and look at ways in which we can sustain somewhat artificially with help our our species and other species that are being beset by this mass extinction that we're in. Um, and so, I mean, these are realities. If we face them now and get to work, and who knows, if you've ever looked at Eastern religions, um, and I have done that deeply in my life, living in India and being with a master, are you really doing all this work for some people you'll never know about? I mean, if you want to confront that understandable selfish feeling that we could have, like, well, why should I bust my ass to help people in the future? Well, you may be one of them in the future. How do you know? It's a 50-50 option. Either you never live again and reincarnate, it is just one life, or there's a 50-50 option that whatever you do in this life and have done in lives in the past have either hurt the future or helped the future in your actions, evil or good. And so maybe it's worth it since it's a 50-50. Since we love so much the one and zero option, the binary choice. If you're going to get into binary choices, this is the big one. Either we never live again or we always live again. And so whatever we're doing here and now, we will profit or suffer from in our future lives. Um, if you want to really test that and use your own study habits and disciplines, just look at all the material that's out there about documented memories of people's past lives. It's quite remarkable. And I've even had situations where I've talked to young kids and when they're who had parents that just let them talk like that because, well, it may be true. I've had kids tell me, I used to be an old man like you, not so long ago. And I said, well, it's great. What happened, and what do you remember about that life? So, a lot of kids have memories of past lives. Even Una Chapman, who's playing Varang in this new uh, Fire and Ash movie of Avatar. She was being interviewed, and there was one point where she was saying as a child to Geraldine or Chapman, her mother, "I I was Charlie. I'm she was saying I was Charlie Chaplin in my last life." And they all went like, okay, well, that's interesting. All right. And just go out and play. They neutral, but that's interesting. Okay. But you know what? Before she made those statements, I've been looking at her. I'm saying, the way she moves and the way I said, she could very well be Charlie Chaplin come back. If I met her, I said, I don't think you as a child were wrong about that. I think you really are Charlie Chaplin come back. You come back as men, you come back as women, and there was something about her. There's something about her that really makes me wonder about that. And then she talked about that. So I went, interesting idea. And these things, if you want to put faith in something, put faith in this possibility, or at least faith in the fact that life never dies. It always goes on, even if your ego dies and the ego memories die. Isn't there something beautiful about doing things but not sure if it's really going to bear fruit, but actually having a civilization of people try to create a better world for the possibility that for some reason, because life never dies, it only visits this changeable world, that it profits us to do that, to make the dream of life here less a nightmare and more a beautiful dream. that maybe some essence of us will relive in rather than naked nightmares. So go ahead.
Yeah, we have two questions.
Okay.
The first question's from Susan, and this is dealing with AI here. Grok, which is one of the AIs on X, Grok said that we don't have chemtrails. It's all vapor trails. What do you think is
Well, it's a good question, Susan, because it what I think is this is how I apply. I mean, I've commented on chemtrails for decades, and what I've done is before I ever went to Grok to hear Grok say that, I went deeply into the study of what is a not a chemtrail, but what is those white lines that we see streaking across our skies that are the vapor trails, the contrails, condensation. That's what that word means. So I look, what's that mean? Contrail. What does that mean? So I look at the word, and it's the condensation in the atmosphere from heat of jet engines that creates cloud temporarily. Those are what those streaks that feather out are. And why is it that some days there's no contrails in the sky? Well, then I studied that. I looked at about water vapor in the higher atmosphere and the different regions of the atmosphere. And, humidity also has an impact as weather changes, even at high altitudes of 35, 40,000 feet. So in days where there's more humidity in the higher altitude areas, you'll see contrails. I mean, I've had even really intelligent people look up and say, "Oh God, there they go again. They're just doing the contrails." And I said, so I thought, okay, I studied what cloud seeding and things are, and definitely if people are thinking if these contrails, these jet engines that are having what, 1,000 to 1,500 degrees of heat in them, what happens to a chemical when you pass it through a jet engine? What happens, or put it another way, if you feed a chemical through a chemical like something you're trying to change the atmosphere with, feed it through the heat of a jet engine, what happens to the chemical? It becomes ash. It becomes inert. If that's the way you're trying to change the atmosphere, and the vapor trails of jets are the proof of the process, there's no correlation. So, after years of human investigation of the chemtrail issue, it's not at all surprising that if I go to Grok, it says exactly what, as a human being, I'm not just taking for granted because Grok is artificially intelligent. I know it. And if Grok said something otherwise, I would dump it as as an artificial idiot because I have every human being much retain our education, our study skills, our ability to question, our ability to be skeptics in the true sense of the word, which is not being a cynic with a front-loaded bias for or against, but to just say, okay, what my study capabilities ask the basic questions, innocent questions. Can chemicals come out of contrails? They're not chemtrails, they're water vapor, but the water vapor is an essence, an evidence of something very hot that condensed the moisture, even at high altitudes. So that means it's hot. How hot is it? Well, it's a jet engine. You then study jet engines and you realize, okay, if it's going to be injected through the jet engine and sprayed out in those contrails, can it survive? No, it can't. It will be made inert. In fact, there's a very interesting plasma jet system that I saw in Science Today decades ago, where it's this kind of big machine, but it actually they're trying to build it so that it will actually make more energy with its plasma than what it loses. And what it basically does, it's a whole new way of looking at landfills, where you get a 2 or 3,000 degree jet And you don't have to worry about dumping high germs and waste from labs, or you can put that through the jet, turns it into something the quality of asphalt, and absolutely neutralizes the germs, the problems, because of the heat of the plasma jet. And so you could literally, not only could you start making asphalt out of it, of all the junk that we put in landfills, you could open up the landfills that have been around for 50, 60 years and use the same machines to burn all that up too, and actually make a extra energy with it. It's a wonderful device. It should be in every landfill in the world. And it would make the dealing of dumping medical materials or things, hazardous materials, at that kind of heat, it's just turned inert. It's not going to be anything but inert ash. So I'm going to be writing a lot more about this stuff in pulling these notes out of things, these kind of machines that we have, these kind of things that we can do. And the other thing too is like when people keep waiting every 30 years. I don't know, I'm over 70 now, and I've been waiting for the oh the Taurus, um, the where you take some deuterium tablet, you drop it in the thing, and you create a fusion reactor. And they're always saying, yes, we can, if you drop it's water. So it's a deuterium, which is one of the most easy to find elements in the whole universe. And you just drop this stuff in and you get a stream of it going. This thing pumps, 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 little sunbursts. It's never, that technology is actually um, pretty close to being used. What has been making this situation, oh, is 30 years ahead, even now, oh, it's only another 30 years. I've been hearing that for 60 years. The reason is that no one has figured out what you do, and this is the thing they really should start thinking about before even getting to this point with the making the boom inside the fusion reactor. How do you take all that massive energy and not have it, if you hook up your city, blow every electronic out just because it's like putting a nuclear bomb through the wires? That's the problem. It's taken me years to find out that that's the fundamental problem in the fusion theory. We have to create a way to store it, and then we have to create a way to siphon it at a level that we literally don't blow the whole infrastructure power system into ash. So that's the big problem with fusion that nobody talks about. And so I'll be writing about that. So, that's why, I highly recommend you subscribe to my Hogue Prophecy reports, because these are the kind of things I write about. I try to find solutions. Go ahead.
We have another question here. What's your take on the Anunnaki?
Um,
Do you have opinions or do you have any?
no, I think it's irrelevant. I think it's irrelevant, actually, the Anunnaki. Um, I think I know a lot of people get into it, and I know I'm buzzkilling a lot of people right now are going, what do you mean? Well, what are you getting so excited about? I'm just an old silly man. I have an opinion. uh, my opinion is not going to erase the Anunnaki if they're all the things you hope and project that they are. Um, that there have been some interfaces with ancient alien civilizations, absolutely, that's happened. I, but I just, there's just some things where it just seems it's not that important. It's just like chemtrails or ARP. Let's upset some more people. ARP, 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 ARP. It's nothing. It's nothing. It's not changing the world. Global warming is not happening because of ARP. Now, and there's I in a live show with George Noory in Everett, Washington, when the subject similar to Anunnaki came up with chemtrails, And even George Norrie got angry with me. And all these people were getting so angry with me. I said, you know, why are you people getting angry? This is not a religion. Yeah, well, maybe it is a religion. Maybe you all believe blindly, put faith in this, and don't really know factually if it's true or not. Because why get upset if I don't believe it and don't think that's there? And then people feel that it's an affront. Why do you get emotional about it? I'm just an old geezer who, has a different view, and you give me so much more power than I have to, uh, you know, to
Well,
upset your
I
cart.
think you're bringing up a good point here, and I think there's a tendency
Yeah,
when people don't want to dive into the details of
yeah,
something, they will gravitate and project kind of almost either hyper spiritual,
yeah.
hyper spirituality with no real proof of,
Yeah,
or
they turn it into a religion like
or
climate change has become a religion.
it's, and I think this is the problem with this whole ancient alien theory
Yeah,
that has really gained momentum in the United States. I There is benefits to having religion in your life, because ones that don't have religion in their life, a society has a tendency to devolve. But
and
there's
I'm a
also
religious man. I'm also a
there,
religious
there,
man. But I'm not into religiosism.
there's also the over reliance of religion to try to define a world that may not make sense
Yeah,
to the population at that time, or to the individual based on their understanding of the sciences at that time. So, I think that there's a lot of people that just gravitate to baby Jesus and he's going to save you,
yeah,
or, an imam,
yeah,
or even, a well-known rabbi.
yeah,
I think that we have a tendency to put these people on a pedestal, thinking that they are going to be the answer because society doesn't have the answers to certain questions. Um,
yeah.
going back to the comment that you made about reincarnation. The thing that gets me with the reincarnation, or the cycling of souls, we have billions and billions of stars, billions and billions of galaxies that have millions, if not billions, of planets. Now, not all of them have life on it, but there's got to be other Earth likes out there.
Yeah.
So we assume that our reincarnation is going to be on Earth. We
Oh,
assume, if you look at the probability with let's say, a universe that's 14 billion years, some scientists are saying it's even older.
yeah. Some are
But
saying
let's
like
just say
35 billion
14.
now
Right,
or
right.
something.
It depends on,
The
some
speed,
of
the different speeds of the Big Bang that's
right.
coming up. Yeah.
Well, there was this period of time after the Big Bang where the light was not shining. So
Yeah.
you don't know for sure until that first light.
Right.
But the first light and the Big Bang, original cosmology was saying maybe that was 300 million years. Some are saying
Yeah.
that it's a lot longer than that.
Yeah.
So if we use the canonical 14 billion number, which it could be 36 or more, but let's just say it's 14. And we assume that Penrose is wrong and that the universe isn't cycling, never ending cycling, right? But let's just say it's 14 billion. If our souls are recycled, the chances of us to be recycled twice within the 14 billion years on Earth,
Yeah.
which has only been around for 4 billion years,
Yeah.
right, is like really small. So the chances of, quote, baby Jesus coming back to Earth
Yeah.
is like almost non existent
Yeah.
if you just look at the probability here. Now, some people will say, well, our souls are really unique, and, we have a higher neshama, and therefore their souls are recycled and they only come to Earth. And, and some far out star
Yeah.
system doesn't have a neshama that's worthy of recycling. It's just, it's on the face of it, it just doesn't make sense. And so I can
Well,
understand when people start questioning, this reincarnation.
well, and to this question about, do we reincarnate to other places? I mean, a lot of what I've learned in my lifetime study of reincarnation and remembering past lives, testing it, and I'll be telling some stories in the book of things to come about this, about in the future how our relationship with reincarnation down the next 4,000 years, and um, a lot of what happens that I've seen in reincarnation is that we are attracted and pulled towards things that we identify with. So it may very well be that it's rare for somebody in our world to actually end up reincarnated in another planet. But then the other possibility too is that civilizations that have been destroyed to the point of their planet dying. I mean, I have some memories of that too before I even knew about that stuff. So those, they'll find other worlds to reincarnate in. Even then later, decades later, even Osho talked about that, my master. He said, well, if this world's destroyed, if we do blow it up, we'll probably wake up in planets that are at the level of our consciousness, high or low, and start all over again. So uh, the other thing too is the metaphor that really kind of makes people think about another way of looking at reincarnation is not a quantity, but a shape of quality that is temporarily rising and falling. It's like I said before on the show, I get the question, will God ever run out of making souls, the ability to manufacture new souls? And I said, I have a completely different way of looking at this from my experience. I would reframe your question to this. Will the ocean ever run out of waves? The answer is no. The ocean will never run out of waves. The difference is the wave is not a separate thing born like a separate soul coming into something. It is a playing surface appearance that is the eternity of the ocean. So it can never be exhausted because the waves don't make themselves, and the waves are not something that are separate from the creation. They rise and fall back into the same source, and therefore it's not a question of running out of resource. It's always been the same source. And so the appearance of people living and dying is like waves. The appearance of worlds, of universes rising up and dying come from that same oceanic source. That is the hypothesis that I live my life by.
Okay, we have another question. Don is on the line. So Don, do you want to unmic here? Yeah. Hi.
How you doing?
Hi,
Yeah,
hi, Don.
how you doing, John? Wanted to ask you a question because before reincarnation, there's incarnation, and I guess I'm asking about sort of this sequence of events. Do you equate the soul as being somewhat, I would call it, a priori, it's non-spatial, non-temporal, and that it is incarnated in a body in our current material world?
Well, what I would say is it's not just a material world. The deeper difference is the source is timeless. The soul, if we want to give it that name, and we have to speak in metaphors about this, and not, but the ocean is this vast source, and it has no shape. It makes shapes and plays on its periphery as people, things, universes, and because they move, they create time, and time creates desire, and time creates goals, and time creates bad experiences that you want to take revenge from, and so on. But the source inside of us that visits this world of waves as a shape of a wave, inside the wave, it's the same salty source as all waves that have risen, are rising, and will rise from the source. That in that metaphorical space, the source is not a thing of time, it's a thing of eternity. And eternity only happens now. Now is not part of time. Uh, and so time is movement. It exists from movement. The still single awareness that does not move, that in us that is constantly observing and witnessing change and movement, not just outside of ourselves, but inside. I am I am seeing myself now with my long white beard and ponytail. It was an image I saw myself as a 5-year old, that this is what I'd look like. But the intriguing thing about it is that if you want to wonder if there's something that is inside you that never changes, that is a presence in you of this eternity, only sentient beings who have awareness of change, unlike animals who don't, they just live their lives totally. But if you can recognize things changing and being transitory, what is recognizing that is not transitory. Because if it was, you wouldn't think it. You would just go on being part of the change until you died. And then it it is a thread of eternity that's in us that is really what meditators and religious people are seeking. They may get involved with personifying it, making an imaginary friend for adults, and making a deity or something. But the deep, I for me, God was once a, a personic thing. Now it's just godliness. Godliness does exist, and I am a luminous atheist.
Let me just interject. The upbringing that I had is definitely, from the Jewish faith, and the Jewish faith would break it down into three. The soul's broken down into three categories: the nefesh, ruach, and the neshama. The nefesh is something that is the part of the soul that allows for the body to live. The moment that the nefesh leaves, the body no longer can exist. But the nefesh also needs the physicality, the DNA, the cells, the
The
heart,
shape of the
the
wave.
shape. Right. Now, when one level above that is the ruach, where it's communicating with the nefesh, the bodily soul, but also it's a mezzanine for the upper part of the soul, the neshama. The neshama is the one that actually is this transcendent wave aspect that you're talking about. And that is at a higher plane where it can know things and it doesn't need to articulate it.
Yes.
So there's really this idea of neshama, nefesh, and ruach, not necessarily in that order. It's neshama, ruach, and nefesh.
Yeah.
But the thing is that there is this embodiment that Don's talking about,
Yeah.
and that's the nefesh that's connected
Yeah.
to the body. Now the question is, does that get, is there recycling? Now, there is a belief, it's a Kabbalistic belief, that Adam, right, had 600,000 sparks. And there were 600,000 sparks from those, each one of those 600,000. And that propagates out another 600,000, another 600,000. So you can calculate this out. There's billions of these, hundreds of billions of these neshomas.
Hmm.
Now, each birth, based on Kabbalistic thought, Jewish Kabbalistic thought, is a diminished neshoma spark from Adam. So Adam had Cain and Abel. Cain and Abel had a neshoma that had a larger spark from Adam. Anyone that descended from that would have a diminished neshoma because it's a spark of a spark of a spark of a spark. So we are a spark of a spark of a spark, going how many generations. So future generations from us will have a diminished neshoma, even though they have a similar level of nefesh that helps to keep the body alive. So the question is, or maybe the confusion is that when these diminished sparks of neshoma are brought together with a body, is it a reincarnation, or is it really just the term feeding the tree? I don't know. You probably have heard the term feeding the tree, where the body is buried, it decomposes, it's feeding back into a system, an ecosystem, to give life again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is that reincarnation or not? I think in most people's definition of reincarnation, decay and recycling of molecules is not reincarnation. But other people may see this as, well, this is a level of reincarnation. It's just that Paul and John aren't coming back as Paul and John. No. We're going to decompose into something, back to Earth, and those molecules somehow, some way, eventually end up, being part of another being. So,
no.
I'm not so sure that we just come back as Paul and John.
No, we never come back the same, but there's a thread that is there of memories in the mental body. But before I get into that, I mean, this opens up a lot.
Well, and this is where I think that mezzanine, that ruach,
yes,
ruach is that it has a sense of something in that bridge of the chachma and the binah that has that sense of that overall knowledge.
Yes,
and it's transmitting it into that nefesh that is new, that's been born, yes. But it still has a knowledge, Kashi record or whatever you want to call it. But there's a knowledge of a greater,
the tree of life.
Yeah. But it's that ruach that is like, well, wait a minute, because it still has a connection to that neshoma. All the neshomas are connected. Like, remember I said, they are a spark from Adam. Each generation is a diminished spark, but all of them have a connection to Adam, to the original neshoma. So that ruach has that connection. So once in a while we'll get that little electricity blip or spark, and it's like, well, wait a minute, I remember something. And that's because we have that ruach.
Well, neshoma now is the highest, right?
Neshoma is the highest.
Yeah.
The neshoma is the highest, the nefesh is the lowest.
Yeah. Now I understand when people say you nefesh. When some people make jokes about that. Neshoma is like the ocean.
Yeah.
And the presence of the neshoma, when a master, an enlightened human being, is fully awake into the neshoma, we'll call it enlightenment, call it something else, literally is like a candle, a lit candle, before a candle that is not lit. And the candle has some knowing that, oh, I don't know why this is important. Either they freak out and run away, or they have the courage to go, wait a minute. This person, I never knew that this wick had a cause, that it needed to be lit. And then he comes closer, oh, I got to check this out, and the master's welcoming. And then suddenly, without the master losing anything, the flame is now on the other candle. The master gave nothing, but everything was given. The neshama effect is very similar. Now, we're taking when we talk about Judaism and we talk about Hinduism, we're talking about the oldest religions. And it's interesting how they have similarities in the way they divide at least the steps of consciousness. There's the three steps you're talking about in Kabbalah. But in Hindu, it is four steps. And the fourth step is not even given a name. It's just called the fourth, Turiya. And it's the four stages of Samadhi, which is the ultimate neshama.
Well, yeah, this is what we call Ein Sof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
So it's Ein Sof.
That,
But it's, and so, the, there is definitely entropy, the diminishment. But I've also noticed that you cannot just have unending entropy. Just like I think if the Big Bang begins to entropize, there will be something that will reach a critical mass where it will start again.
this is where Penrose says that
Yeah.
the cosmos recycles.
Yeah,
See, the thought he has is
cosmos.
that when you have the anthropic death of just the universe freezing, it gets so spread out, and the matter doesn't mix or mix with other matter. There's no gravity anymore. There's not. It's so far out. Just imagine there's two molecules and they are trillions of light years away from each other. All right. But something happens in this dead space, a frozen universe. Even though it has molecules in it, it's so spread out that it's frozen, and then all of a sudden there is a new Big Bang that takes place. There's like
death,
and then all of a sudden it recycles.
Death, ultimate death, is the mother of life. I mean, I encountered it when I tried to commit suicide, actually, in 1981. I write about it in my book, Anthony Bourdain, the choice between mundane and spiritual suicide, personal reflection by John Hogue, and it's on Amazon. You can buy it. It's one of my most important books that was triggered by Anthony Bourdain's death, who was a man who was a real seeker, and the kind of seeker who all real seekers face the crisis of existentialness. Who am I? Is this all that I am? And I mean, whenever people are coolly and fully contemplating suicide, I say of those people, these are the mystics, the potential mystics, because they're really asking the profound questions. Is this all I am? Is there nothing more? Who am I? And so when I came back from India in 1980, early 81, I now had an orange robe Swami, and I'm Swami Dhyan Arjuna, and I've been initiated into this, and Osho transmitted something into me that was the most profound non-event. Everybody was saying, "Oh, the mountains are going to move. You're going to have all these orgasms. Everything's fine." And when he reached in and touched my third eye, there was just a little spark, and then I was absolutely bathed in a non-event. Like, but it was profound and it's and so but I'm back in the world and I didn't feel I could survive in it. And then some thought came up, well, you're free. You're free and responsible for whatever you want to do. Maybe, well, why should I be here? Maybe it's time to go. And so I was going to walk off this golf course in San Pedro that near my trailer park, which was part of the trailer park, which almost nobody ever used. So it kind of became my place to meditate and contemplate. I said, well, I'll just walk towards the cliff. And at a certain point, when I have 360 feet of air beneath my feet, I will fall into the raging waves and rocks. And I was going to do it. And only when you're going to do it do you have this, you may have this remarkable experience when you've chosen to die and are a witness of it, you discover that life and death are absolutely intimate. They're the most intimate couple of lovers that has ever existed. So I, it was such a profound, indescribable union that before I walked off, because I knew if I decided not to walk off, I'd lose this, this amazing mystery that was coming because I was going to die. I had chosen to die. And so I sat down next to this little young silver dollar eucalyptus tree in the golf course, and I just wanted to savor this mystery that I had not any idea I would be feeling from this. But really, if you've ever been close to death, if you've ever had that in your gut and things are happening, and then if you're really at death's door, you can see things that you will not see if you're not about to die. And and so I sat there for a few minutes, just absorbing it, my eyes closed. And then some energy out of the earth from the roots of the tree threw me 6 feet forward and into the crabgrass. And then I cried my my whole soul out. I just cried and cried and cried and cried. And then about this whole issue of just not, the world doesn't have anything to do with me and doesn't all that. And then I hear this and I hear this whispering of wood and leaf, and I look over my shoulder, and there's the little silver dollar tree going. A little wind had kicked up, and I look up above the tree in endless blue sky, and I'm seeing rays and arrays of cirrus clouds dancing past the sky. And suddenly I became aware of the thing that my whole attention to people and their egos and their problems, my own included, I became aware of how existence loves all of us, how it never repeats itself. Every creation is absolutely adored and loved by existence. And then I realized it's from this place that I'll manage somehow to live in this world of robots and zombies. And and so what happened was I had not a mundane suicide where you want to kill and destroy yourself because it's just too painful to go on. I was intending that. This thing that had met over me had left behind a revelation that my misery had jumped off the cliff and left me behind. And, or to use another metaphor, the tree of my misery was chopped down right before me. And it's taken me 4 or 5 decades because it's like a pine tree. You know, it remains green for years before it really starts rotting, like old habits. The old habits were still there, but it took them about 50 years to rot away and to just go back into the earth like a tree that had fallen. And you know, it takes its needles a long time to go yellow and all of that. And so I was, I was no longer connected to that, identified with those issues. And so I've been watching it rot and disappear. So what I had was a spiritual suicide People hear that. So what, you mean your spiritualism is suicided? And that's like a lot of people don't want to read the book, even though I explain in the book. They can't get past the cover. I said, I explain, no, this is not mundane suicide is the baddie. Spiritual suicide is wonderful. It's where your misery commits suicide, your identity commits suicide. The thing that makes you under the illusion of being separate from everything commits suicide. And then you slowly, slowly embrace the spiritual suicide is that your bliss, you're not, your identities have been killed off. And so it's I try to convey it. Osho used to talk about it all the time. I never really understood it until I had my own experience with this. So so what then, to use what we've been talking about, Paul and I, is that the highest point of soul. We'll just call it that. Shofar, not the shofar. That's the horn. And the Turiya,
Nishoma.
the Nishoma, and the Turiya are the spiritual suicide gets you in touch with that which never changes. And actually, the more you live in a changeable life, if you really live in it, but not of it, the change actually helps you every moment to become aware of that which is eternal and never changes. It's always been here. It can be nowhere else because it's not a thing of time. But because it's not a thing of movement and change and aging and all that, it is that in you. If you want to know that you've got it, if you are aware that you've been changing, you were young, now you're older. If you've even become aware that even in the first 7 years of your life, the child that you were born in 7 years had shed all of its cells, and now you're a completely different person every 7 years. But you're not. There's that which witnesses it. And it's one of the sad things about language that the worst word that we have to try to grasp this in English is meditation. Because it has a quality of I'm thinking and contemplating. I'm going to be mindful. But what it really is, it's no mindfulness. It's not the mind. It witnesses the mind like everything other, witnesses the emotions. And in its witnessing, these things become more vivid, but they become more vivid because they're a movie now. They're not you. They never have been. You have glimpses of this. And so the mind, so the word in Sanskrit is dhyana. Dhyana means witnessing. Just being a witness, not judging for or against, just watching the movie, watching the emotional and mental reactions that come from the movie of your life, but being that which is not anything that moves. Your memories are movements, your thoughts are movements, your emotions move. That's why they keep changing like the weather. But what's not moving is watching them. And if you become aware of that reflective process of witnessing, neither for nor against, you start to become the witness. You've never done it. You can never do anything, which is of time. You just become the water in the wave that remembers that it's the ocean. Now, if it remembers that it's the whole ocean, how can it go to war with other waves? How can it not love every wave, whatever state the wave is in? Because maybe the waves that believe that their shape is who they are, because that's what the Society of Waves teaches waves. Oh, you're the shape. The shape is you, not what's inside. There's nothing inside. Your shape is what makes you so precious. And that's why it's so, it's such a sad thing when a beautiful wave like you, like me, will die and go away. And then it's like never comes back. And how sad that is, because the wave's shape is everything. But the truth is, what's inside the wave has no shape, can enjoy the shapes as they create and rise and fall. It's not against them. That water that's been part of being a shape, when it splashes back into the water, will be a water memory that will go and be in the shape of a future water shape. And that's where you get reincarnation. Memories of other splashes. Death is a splash, and when it splashes, it throws the parts of the wave that were the shape into new waves. And that's why you don't remember a complete uh, past life, because it's all fragmentary, because it's all splashing around. When the mental body breaks, it splashes its thoughts around, and you actually absorb other memories. Now, there will come a time in the future where there'll be a technology to really look deep into this, and it will eventually give us a technology where we will be able to go all the way back to the beginning of life and know what it really was like, because the memory is there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And right to the beginning of the amino acids being zapped by lightning.
Yep. Don has another question. So
Okay.
Don, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to play on that your three I would call them phases, not phases, but conditions. The Ruah. My question really is, or I'm sorry, is it the Nephism? I'm sorry.
Nefesh is by the body.
Nefesh.
Ruach is the middle, and then Neshama is the eye soul.
Well, being an engineer, I'm also just kind of asking you, do you see kind of the body as sort of just the DNA as just coding for biological machinery?
Well,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
So where I'm going with this, there was recently Brian Rommel posted, and this is what's interesting, it may have some relevance here, where he's talking about now they filmed the formation of the heart in an embryo. And they're showing the instance in which all of the cells begin to essentially pulse at the same time in synchronicity for its first contraction.
Right. But you have to also remember that to do that, you have to provide the right environment, microenvironment, for those cells to start coding for the right proteins to create this electrical signal. So as the embryo is morphing, it's communicating to other areas, and the cells start to differentiate in those early phases because of those microenvironments. And so the whole epigenetics of certain zones of the embryo will start to specialize. That's why eventually you get a heart or a brain or the limbs. So there's these microenvironments that are key to differentiation of these cells.
And are you aware of Michael Levin's work on morphogenetic fields?
No.
Where he's basically manipulating those electrical signals, and he's taking the cells of the eyes in a toad and he's moving them into the stomach by manipulating the fields.
Mm-hmm.
And it's as if it's where he's gone with this is this idea
he's
of
changing the microenvironment.
He's manipulating what he says are fields that essentially have been sort of ignored by the science of their influence on the way that cells communicate with one another in a harmonious fashion in order to carry out the morphology of the species, so that a toad's eyes move in a certain direction. That's the information that's stored in these electrical fields to move the eye into the right position that would represent the morphology of the toad. And so there's this idea at, I want to say, the nephish level, where there seems to be something that has been inserted in a field that defines the morphology of the species.
When the nephish leaves the body dies. So for the body to, quote, be alive, and I would say life would start at inception. You know, the conception of the the egg and the sperm, right? And that fusing. When you actually see this under a microscope, when the actual fertilization of a egg literally creates a lightning strike, and then you start to see it propagate into the egg.
So what is when
and that moment in time when that lightning strike happens, that's when the nephesh is married or is layered over the actual physical part of the body. In this case, the body is just an egg and a sperm that has merged.
Like code for it's
and then as it's developing, the body's developing, but it's developing because the nephesh is right above the body. I wouldn't say it's infused with the body, but it's right above it. And the moment that the nephesh decides to go away, for whatever reason, the end of the body happens. Sometimes it's in early development. Sometimes it's when you're 70 years old or 100 years old, whatever. And what's interesting is that some of these individuals that they have a sense that they're going to die, it's usually within 24 hours. People have like a little hint, and according to Kabbalistic thought, is that the actual nephesh can leave the body 24 hours before. The body is still kind of lingering, but it's going to die. But the body, what we call body, its energy source to stay alive is the nephesh. All right.
So my next question is on this idea of the ruah.
Yeah.
I find I like I want to get John into this as well. I always look at the Promethean myth of this techne that was given from the gods to this, say, let's just go with this analogy with the nephesh on top of this coating of biological machinery that allows it the ability through language, which I think is truly the fire. It's actually language that allows it to be this witness that he talks about of creating self-awareness to actually manipulate time in the sense that it can create metaphorical abstraction in which it allows it to create scenarios that exist in the future and in the past so that it can actually make decisions within the present. So it literally is a technology, so to speak, a gift from the gods that allows it the ability to manipulate time.
Well, my first reaction to that, Don, is that when someone's saying the gift of the gods, this is really just a misunderstanding of the different attributes of the Sephiroth. And that people they get confused that one attribute of the Sephiroth is a god. So there's kingship, and there's foundation, and there's victory, and beauty, and there's all these different aspects of the tree of life. But when it's misunderstood, and when the Ruach is communicating to these different attributes of the tree of life, they would say, well, that must be a god. It must be a god. But it's not. It's really the quantum physics, for lack of a better term, of these souls that we're talking about. So that's just my take on it. John, I mean, you chime in.
It's always interesting. I was just there being quiet, trying to add to the dialogue that which doesn't change.
So you're not going to add anything?
Well, let me add to and I can end it because the question that I have is in this idea of evolution And the idea is language is something that evolved. This idea of our ability to create words and then metaphors and then abstract, was that something that was
done based on this philosophy? Words and knowledge came before the code of the human body, material world. Before the universe, there was language, and that language is in Bina. So you have Chachma, which is wisdom, and Bina, understanding. And so when you have a thought, when there's a thought, before even the human body, before the universe, there was a thought. And that thought eventually ended into spilling into something called Bina. And Bina is understanding. And hence, God spoke. And there was. And then, therefore, other attributes of the tree of life started to emerge, started to congeal, whatever terms that you want to use. And eventually, over time, through Simpson, there's a constriction from one attribute to another that leads to a point where we call birth, or the birth of the cosmos. I mean, if you look at all these moments in time, all these major milestones of birth and death, there's a constriction that's taking place. There's a point in time, like birth, going through the birth canal. That's a constriction, right? So the Big Bang, there was a point, there was a singularity, and then all of a sudden it exploded out. So there's a constriction and then an explosion. So what happens is from one attribute of the Sephiroth to another, a lower one, there's a constriction and then an expansion. And then when it starts to constrict again, and then there's another expansion going down the tree to our level of what we call existence. So language was way before mankind. Language was way before the universe. There was a language and there was a thought of wisdom before us. So we're just a fractal representation of something much, much bigger than the universe, something way beyond it.
Everything that has been said is really great. Everything has been said. Everything that's been thought, conjured. There is something that is deeper than all of that. There is something that was there before the thought, before the idea, before the sound. And that's our very nature. And what I observe in myself and others, and even in this dialogue, is and it's not a right or wrong thing. It's simply a process that is outside of the source. And the process is that it's because everything that has been thought about it, everything that you guys have been discussing, are things moving in time. But at no time, and that's what my contribution to, I don't know if people noticed it or not, some might, why I just spontaneously got into that place of not thinking, to bring that element into this debate or this discussion. Something that, if you become aware of it, it is your eternity. And And what it helps you see is the more, and the beauty of living in a body and creating in this world is that it's moving to create more and more things, new thoughts, and it's wonderful. It's a play. The Hindus call it lila. The existence, the existence is a great play. The core existence, timelessness, playing in form, playing in theorems and ideas, and trying our utmost to understand with a capacity that those things living in time, mind, movement, thought, emotions, bodies, temporality, are things that come off of it, but the source of it is not these things. The ability to relax into that which does not think, does not even exist, because existence also is a prison. To not exist or to exist, two sides of the same coin are held by that which has no hand. To, even though I talk so much about the world and other things, my other side, my spiritual life, is trying to kind of give you a Zen experience where um, there's something far deeper, that if the body-mind vehicle is in harmony with that, um, you know, it's almost impossible to describe what I'm saying, because everything I'm trying to, I can only hint. I can hint in time of something that's timeless. And as much as uh, all these theories are wonderful, and I watch my mind thinking of these things too, and all the elaborate wonders of it, it can be very easy to forget the center of all of it. And because, the play takes you. And trying to find the knack of being taken, but totally taken, but without being identified, where it goes, is the path that I'm on. Because identify comes from the word identity, which fundamentally comes back to the word idios, which means one who is under the illusion of being separate from the entire godliness. And in a more vulgar term, it's called being an idiot. And so, there's nothing wrong with being an idiot. It's the basic nature of the third, the lower material part of this, that has a sense of knowing when dying is coming, and that explains very well how people have a presentiment of death coming. Sometimes it happens that you have a presentiment of that you're about to die, but it's a potential, like what happened to me when I was going to step out and drive down to Long Beach to see my girlfriend in Laguna Beach. I was a sannyas and just new disciple too, and suddenly I had this huge premonition that I was going to die. That what I was about to do was going to head. I felt like there was a boot that was so big, and I was such a small little ant that I can't even see it when it crushes me. And I'm standing at the threshold of the door, and I said to my mother, who was also sannyas, and I said, I think I'm going to die, something, and I don't know what to do. I felt so helpless, and then some invisible force pushed me out of the door. And it's an interesting thing, because 40 minutes later, in Long Beach, California, as I was passing legally through a green light, a man in a huge boat of a station wagon hit my two-door Maverick Ford at 55 miles an hour and T-boned me right in the driver's door. And I was given up for being dead for 20 minutes as they worked on the other man. And but I wasn't dead. The moment of the collision, I witnessed my body, the world, earth, the sky, the car, all ripped like shreds of sheets. And I was thrown into an infinitely now goldenness, infinite goldenness. And in the infinite goldenness were those who were not thereing with me. where there was no time. So messages were perfectly received that were never uttered. It's sort of like that beautiful story when Subhuti, one of the disciples of Buddha, was sitting under one of these beautiful short little trees that have white flowers that usually during the monsoon season in India, they, in one night, snow all their white flowers just in one night. It's like a snowfall. So beautiful. I've seen this in the ashram in India. And so he's sitting there, and there are presences there that are not there at all, who are contacting him with nothing said, and nothing was heard, but things were transmitted perfectly. And if I were to put them in a time frame, a time mind frame, this is a discussion that they never had. Those who never spoke to Subhuti said, um, we want to thank you for your beautiful discourse on silence. And he never replied, but I haven't said anything. And they never heard him say it, and they responded, that's why it was so beautiful. So these two presences that were never there are speaking to me that have also become nevermore. And they imparted upon me, if I put it into words, they said, we're here to tell you that you're back home, that in fact you never left. And we're also here to remind you that you made a decision to go back into life. And that was something because I really resisted coming back into this life. I have a memory of that. And they were saying, yeah, but you finally decided to go. And if you want to stay here, well, you've always been here. So if you want not to go back, that's perfectly fine. But we're here to remind you that if you do go back, it will be very beautiful. And I felt all this love and all this help and things that was possible. So I looked down at the lower vibratory reality, which was like lower music. And in there, I could see my wrecked car in Long Beach, California. And I impressed upon them without ever saying anything, I'm going to really kick myself for going back to Long Beach. So suddenly I was back in my car and I was looking at the Mala of Osho's picture, and I was very limber. I still am. Um, and so I was like way over, neck way over onto my lap. And the first normal thought in mind memory I had was, well, at least that isn't broken, the Mala. And then I sat up slowly and I looked at the drive shaft was bent. The dashboard had taken most of the 55-mile-an-hour force of the crash. I had a slight ache in the upper part of my very hard head that hit the window at 55 miles an hour in reaction to the T-boning. I was in seatbelt. And then I saw that the brake and the fuel pedal had tied themselves into a bow tie, and I giggled. I felt like I had been gone a million years. I felt a radiation of coolness coming off of me. And there was also to my side a tap, 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 tap. I slowly looked over very calmly, and there's an ashen-faced paramedic with a guy with the jaws of life behind, ready to pull the cord and pull me out like a broken can. And he's going, ashen face, seems like he's looking at a dead body or something. Can you get out? And I looked down, saw that I still had a door on my side of the dark car, and I said, okay, very calm. I opened the door. I stepped out into an intersection that was absolutely flooded with gasoline. And there was a man who had kind of bozo hair with no hair on the top and no front teeth running with absolute joy. His suspenders were doing their best to hold his huge gut in place. They were like going, as he's running, splashing gas everywhere. The paramedics are still more in shock than I am. They're just, and he gets to me and he literally picks me up off my feet and hugs me and then puts me down. And he said, "Oh, son, it's a it's a miracle that you're alive." And he grabbed my mala and he ran his hands up and down and he said, "Dem sure good beads." And I looked and I said, "Yes, they are." And it was through him that I later found out what happened in the 20 minutes that I had missing. What had happened is the car hit me, and when they saw me, my I was absolutely white as a sheet. My neck was way far over. They didn't know how double jointed I am, and they thought, "Oh my God, his neck's been snapped by the collision." And even the paramedics thought I was dead, and maybe I was for a bit. And they started working on the guy who was kind of a poor guy, he was a three-time loser. He was an illegal alien driving his brother's car without a license. And they even tried to, even tried to, with all the witnesses, they tried to sue me for actually running the light, which they had done, what he had done. That didn't go anywhere. So, so anyway, it was through the man from Ohio that was on his vacation. He's the one that called in the paramedics and the police guy to be there, the cop. And uh and then they're looking and they've given me up, I'm dead. That guy's dead. And then suddenly they saw me moving. It was like you said, it was like Lazarus was coming out, you know. And people, oh my God, he's alive. And so I'm moving and suddenly I got my head up and looking around and then they had another shock when I walked out into the gasoline because I'm dressed as a Swami from India. You know, I have this fuchsia maroon robe and this big beads, and I'm stepped right out of an ashram, and so it was like, my God, who is this guy? And um, so that accident was one of three brushes with death I had within a 2-month period. 3 days later, I had the third. I won't talk about that, maybe another time. But um, I it when I was out in the golden infiniteness, I saw all the potentials of the next few hundred years. And I thought maybe that I would last that long, but I know my body won't do that. But it was like, so in a way, my work kind of comes from this. Things drop in there effortlessly that were open to me in that one kind of eternal nothingness moment in the golden infiniteness. And and so I've never been quite in my body. It's like, kind of got eyes in the back of my head, eyes in my fingertips. I mean, it's like it's a little, it's beautiful actually. Um, so these, it's from experiences like that where I flew beyond experience, beyond time, that I take back to me in this world something I want to share with everyone, even if it's just me being quiet as you guys are talking. This thing which it doesn't exist at all, and that it was makes it perfectly free, because existence is a concept, you know. Non-existence cannot exist without existence as a concept. So there are two concepts, two sides of something that are outside of that no mindfulness that witnesses it. So um, I guess this would be called the Turiya, glimpses of the Turiya, the fourth state of samadhi. I don't know. Um, so, I mean, in a way, sometimes I feel more and more I begin to understand when Emperor Wu asked Bodhidharma with his big eyes, with no eyelids, and like a lion, very terrifying Buddha, but amazing Buddha. And the emperor said to him, "Who are you?" And he said, "No knowing." See, the so it's such a challenge to try to explain something which needs no explanation. But it's the only way to hint it with the thing that isn't it. Um, so,
All right, can I ask you a question?
mm-hmm.
One of the things that we talked last about when I asked you a question was the Ukrainian conflict. And I not to take it away from the spiritual aspect of, I think, what you were describing of this connection to this eternal.
It's okay. You are taking it away, and that's okay.
Well, I'm trying to make I'm trying to turn it into like, what is the experience that we have currently, where we're seeing endless conflict, and in our own, say, spiritual journey of sort of trying to connect to source. Is it these other, say, individual sparks are not connecting to the source? So do we have like this statistical do we have like the statistical
Stop.
Curve of
Stop.
people that are, yeah.
Stop right now. Stop. Just be. It's very sincere what you're doing, but everything you're doing is getting all coiled up and, well, the first love of this, and we can try, and there's a spark over here. All that. This is the mind. And the mind's a wonderful servant, but a terrible master. Uh, if you're coming from this space that is beyond all that and be in all of that, your mind can then work in that space of relaxedness. It just will work for you as a servant. But for all of us, mostly the mind is our terrible master. It's a tyrant, and even when we're more brilliant with the mind, sometimes we can get even more caught up in it. It's um, you're just thinking about all of this, and that's okay. What gets to be a problem is if you're identified as the thinker. You're not the thinker. I'm not the thinker. So there are certain techniques that I've learned from my master Osho, and really comes to a point where he once made a statement at the end of a book called "There's Only One Sky." It's about the Tibetan masters of the Pink Lotus Order, which Tilopa was the first, and then Milarepa was the third, and Marpa, and really great Tibetan tradition. But it got me. I was still very intellectually engaged with Osho's work, and I was reading this, and I was hoping there would be this big kind of ending, this climax, this kind of intellectual opening. But then he said something that was a real buzzkill. He said the book, he said, "Okay, now there comes a time when you have to put the books aside and take a jump." And I was scared because I was going to have to take a jump from what I was unfamiliar with, but which was something the mind can't grasp, because mind is a creature of time, and this thing is not in time. It's free of it. And if the source is remembered, and then if you can play with your mind and body and the changing world with it, it's quite a revolutionary, different insight into being a visitor of this world of time and temperateness. So um, and I know where you're going in with the whole thing with Ukraine and all that, because I've been writing tens of thousands of words about it and doing things. So, but there's the mind cannot solve this problem, because it's the problem. When it's the problem, the mind is when we are identified as a mind. And so what I could say to you, if you email me, and anyone that's listening to this, what I can do is give you the next step to kind of understand this, it was a step I also had to take, is that I ended up going to my master in India, and I can share with you links and information to the meditation techniques that my teacher Osho had given me and other disciples, because what's wonderful about them is they are tailored for the needs of our times in this mind amplified world that we live in. And so I'm saying that and it's such a discussion like this. We've reached, when I said stop, it was not to be rude or anything, but I'm just simply being compassionate. I'm saying this thing I want to share with you now has to go beyond all the thinking. And the next step is to offer these techniques in an email, which I have, which will direct you to where the books are and some of the CDs for the music and all. And to start to experiment with these techniques, which will create a climate that will bring you closer to being a witness of the mind than being centered in the mind. Um, and so I offer that to you. I'd be happy to send that. And to anyone who's listening, just go to I think the email's posted. I guess the email's posted, isn't it? My email is on the page.
I have links in the description to your website.
Yeah. Well, you go to the website and then the contact button at the top of the website to contact me, uh, push that, and then I'll see it. And I will, and you just put meditation if you just want to say on the subject line. And I will send you, as soon as I see it, I will send you this information. And then you can try these things out. And then I can kind of help you at times to go into this whole other world of timelessness that is the center of all things.
We have one last question,
Okay.
and someone typed it in. It's
Thanks,
from
Don. I'm sorry I interrupted you, but I had to. But it's okay.
is from Sir PMC. Now he wants to get your opinion about the Alberta independence referendum that's taking place in 2026.
Well, the concept of not just in Canada, but also in the United States, there have been prophets in the United States back in the 1880s and earlier that saw the potential for not just well, they didn't see this. Something I saw years ago was that there's a battle of verbs that happens in this. I'll speak a bit about America before I get to Alberta. Is there's a there's a cycle of a struggle of the verb that we have in the United States in the way we address the country. Um, we we kind of unconsciously say now the United States is, but that's grammatically incorrect. Before the American Civil War, Americans said the United States are, like a union of sovereign states, more sovereign than federal, but with a weaker federal system. The Civil War happened, and after the bloodletting of many people in 4 years, we started to call it the United States is, as a united country. About 20 years ago, I started writing articles about how I see the verb is going to change again. And by the 2020s, it will really be changing. We want to go back to are, not is. And there are prophecies about this from the 1880s. Some very interesting, accurate, published authors were speaking about how they thought that the American Union may break up into more sovereign states as a potential. And that also includes potentials at Alberta, British Columbia. A lot of Western Canada has been thinking of being on its own out of the Canadian Union. And so it might even be possible that it might be a loose association of dominions and states that might interact as sovereign states in a larger confederation of states and provinces. That's very possible as one of the things that might happen in the coming decade from starting with next year.
Okay. Well, that was the end of the questions. We're at the end of the show, but John, could you explain your periodicals and your readings so the individuals that are watching, we have a pretty good showing here today,
Good.
so they can sign up and help support your work?
Yes, I have HogueProphecy.com, which, if you look at it on a laptop or if you look at it on a larger computer, you can read it pretty easy. It's We're soon going to get it fixed so that it'll be eye friendly on cell phones. That should happen in another month. But what I also have out, and that's basically where I put a lot of my thousands of articles since 2000 that I've written. But I'm putting a lot of them now on X. So if you just type in the search John Hogue, you'll run into those. I'm still loading them in, uh, starting from this now closing year to the present, and then they'll be loading in more often. So that's also a way to read it easily on X. But what I also do is I have the Hogue Prophecy Report, which is sent to an email, your email. It's a PDF file. It's an Adobe file, and on it, stamped with it, just after the table of contents and the opening picture, is in large font a ad for Adobe Liquid. So it's free. You can download it and then you put it on your phone and you can read any Adobe file formatted to your pleasure for what your eyes need on a cell phone. So that is already available for my Hogue Prophecy reports. And anybody who gets subscribes to it, because when you go to my website, you will see samples, free samples of articles, the Hogue Prophecy articles, and with links to how you can become an automatic payee, five or a little more every month. It automatically goes to me so I can keep this going. Or you can do it all as a $60 donation for 1 year. And then I send you these. They kind of come out when they come out, roughly a bi-monthly delivery. Um, and they're fully illustrated, and they're some amazing articles. And anybody that wants to join it now, I had a whole bank of articles I did about John Brown and Charlie Kirk and the parallels between them and the potential future of a catalyzation of some civil war. And these articles really were a big hit. And so I'm going to make sure that the last sending I did in December will also be given to you free. And so, so these are two things I have there. And also, if you go to HogueProphecy.com, right at the top, you'll see a little blurb about get a reading, a Hogue reading. And these readings are about 2 hours. Around 5 p.m., although I can arrange for outside of the United States for different times in Australia and Europe and other places. But this is where you have a one-on-one with me with this background and not so messy. I was busy translating, so I've got all my translation books scattered all over the place. So yeah, you could and then have a one-on-one reading with me, which would have a little bit of astrology that you can get a free astrology chart from astro.com, which has a really clear, nice way of looking at the aspectarian and all for me to help you and look at that. And then I also use the tarot and also use other divination techniques. And it's a lot of fun. And everybody that does it with me are having a marvelous time with it, and time really flies. And so that's another thing you can do. And if you send me an email that says Hogue reading, I will, when I see it in all thousands of emails, I'll get right back to you and give you a detailed account of what's needed in the reading, how to pay for it, and what the current times are. And then we'll lock down. And this is a good time to do it. It's a new year. So, it's definitely, and it's going to be definitely, I'm going to be in my readings. I'm going to be reading a lot about how this year will impact each person that reads this, because it's going to be the most significant year in history, so thus far, what's coming. And I will be saying more about 2026 in the near future. There's so much to talk about. I'm still just outlining the things that I'm going to be talking about. So yeah, so that's hopefully you'll have a reading with me. It'd be wonderful to meet you in glorious 2D. And I thank Paul and all of you for listening, and I thank especially all the people who ask questions and were patient with me.
So everyone, please click the link that's in the description of this video and go to John's website and help support the work that he does. In addition, can you please ask your social media to subscribe to the channels that we have so we can accrete a larger audience as we do these shows? I think it's going to be very important as we move towards tumultuous times in 2026 and in 2027. And I think there's some unique insights that John has that needs to be spread, that the word needs to be spread, and we need your help. So please ask your social media to follow us. I greatly appreciate it. And again, please click the link and go to John's website and help support. Because
And
we're doing this for the audience to be informed, and it's all free. And it's important to help support this type of media stream.
and what you can do right now is what I do with all of my sources. Just hit that like button. You can hit it right before the show happens. You can hit it when you feel, wow, this is great. You can hit it after the show. It'll say hit the one time you hit it, but it's so simple and so important and so easy, but so helpful to get the algorithms in YouTube to realize, oh, there's something going on here. More people are going in. So if all 4, 5, 600 of you do it now, YouTube's going to notice, and it's going to turn more attention to Paul and me and all of his other guests.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you everybody for attending, and we'll do this again 2 weeks or so. And I want everyone to have a happy new year, and we'll see you on the other side. Thank you for joining. Bye bye.
Bye bye.